What's up guys, Brian Phobos here for a video about why I'm not investing in Salt at this current moment. So if you guys have heard about Salt, it's a lending platform that you're able to essentially get a loan against your Bitcoin, and eventually they're going to have other digital assets like Ethereum, and they're showing Dash and NIM and these other digital assets on here as well. But basically kind of like you would get a mortgage on a house, and that the house is collateral, your Bitcoins will be collateral. So a couple things about that, and let's kind of dive into this. Let's talk about the team here. So the first thing I saw was Eric Voorhees as an advisor. I have a lot of respect for Eric. He has a lot of respect in the industry, and he's been there kind of since the beginning. But basically, he had Satoshi Dice. It was a gambling site, and then he sold it to some anonymous investor. And then he had Coinapult. He actually ran that out of Panama, I believe. And then Shapeshift, if I'm correct, runs out of Switzerland or Luxembourg or something. I looked back on the website, and it's almost like they took the address away. But basically, they did that for regulations and stuff. So I was kind of surprised to see him on this team, because it seems like they're going to be launching out of the United States. And he's an advisor, so he's not putting, he's not CEO and stuff, so that kind of maybe releases him from some liability to some respect. But lending and banking in the United States is extremely difficult, and we've definitely seen with the Bitcoin exchanges, some of them have blocked certain states like New York and Washington because of the regulations, and every state has different regulations for lending. That's going to be the tough thing. I ran into this a couple years ago. If you guys have heard of Lending Club, it's basically a peer-to-peer lending site where, a bunch of people can pool their money and they can lend you money for whatever you're trying to get a loan for, whether it's for your business or personal loans, which sounds cool. It's like, oh wow, I could get this loan that would be lower interest than a credit card or the interest from a bank if I get a loan from a bank, but it would be fashioned from like a ton of different people. But here's the thing, and then I thought, well, I could be a lender and I could make 10 or 12%. That's obviously a pretty good investment. But in Arizona, you can't even be a lender on this thing. You can only buy and sell notes just because of the regulations in this state, and all the states are different. So they're going to have a huge headache contending with all the regulations, both in the United States as a whole on a federal level, and they're going to have it on a state level, and it's going to be a nightmare. So that's one hurdle, and obviously they know what they're up against, and I don't know, nobody else sticks out to me, just kind of name wise, that's kind of in the industry. I'm sure they're perfectly capable, and I think it definitely says a lot that Eric Voorhees is on the team. So I would say that's a positive on the team. They know what they're up against. They're going to tackle this very, very hard problem, and I definitely wish them success as far as that goes. Now, one of my main concerns, so they're building on the Ethereum platform, and in my head, I'm kind of worried that Ethereum right now won't be able to handle the amount of transactions if this becomes successful. So if this is firing off loans like crazy, because the thing is after a person is in the system and they're already a member and they've already went through your know your customer rules and they've got all their information in there, like their ID and all that, and then they've got the lenders that already have the money in their bank account ready to fire off these transactions over to the borrower, then, let's say it becomes super popular and there's, 50 transactions firing off a second. Well, Ethereum right now can only do 15 transactions per second, and it was having issues on some of the ICOs that came out that were super popular. It was having issues at 7 or 8 transactions per second. So I just worry, and it's not just Sol, it's going to be other decentralized applications and platforms that are trying to fire off these contracts, and then if Ethereum doesn't scale sooner than later, a lot of this stuff's going to have an issue. Like, for instance, if you see there's been a couple projects that say that they're going to create a social media platform, kind of like Steam It, on the Ethereum blockchain. None of them have obviously came out because it's not possible. The graphene blockchains that BitShares and Steam It use can do up to 100,000 transactions per second. So it can do real world tasks, versus with Ethereum currently, it can't do enough transactions per second. That's why Vitalik is working on Ethereum too. So moving on from that, that worries me that they're building on a platform that might not be capable of the volume that they would incur if this became popular and was running at scale and doing loans for people all over the world. So that's definitely a concern of mine. And then the elephant in the room is the volatility of Bitcoin. It's like, how much is an investor going to be willing to loan on a Bitcoin? And I'm kind of thinking, and I know some people are saying almost like it would be 80% loan to value ratio or something, like that if Bitcoin was 10,000, that you'd get $8,000. But from the lender's perspective, if it truly is the lender is taking on all the risk, then I'm thinking, no way. They would only maybe want to put it at 20% loan to value ratio, which is kind of low. Let's say it's at 10,000, and then they would be willing to loan 2,000, on that, but you're secured. And so let's say you default on that $2,000 loan, and then you lose a Bitcoin that's worth, let's just pretend 10,000. Today it's over 11,000, but I'm just using easier numbers. So then it's like, well, from the borrower's perspective, is that worth it? Are you going to risk? You'd be better off cashing out your Bitcoin, potentially incurring whatever tax liability that you may incur on it, instead of risking it for such a low amount that you would borrow. But I don't know. That's all speculation, because if you look at the previous Bitcoin bubbles, there can be certain things that can be assessed from the March 2013 one, and then the November 2013 peak, and then you can assess certain levels on the ground floor. See, the ground floor of every bubble ends up being higher than the previous one. So this ground floor is higher than this ground floor. This ground floor is higher than this ground floor. And then that's what I'm assuming is going to happen here if history repeats itself. And I'm not trying to spread FUD, guys. This could go up to 15,000. It could go up to 20,000. It could go up to 25,000. Nobody knows the peak. If anybody tells you that they do, they're kind of lying, or they should say, well, I think that it's going to do this. So, but eventually this is going to retrace, and it's probably going to wash out a bunch of noobs. So we don't know when that's going to be. But be ready, be watching. I don't know. Just depends what your strategy is. But anyway, in regards to that, another issue with something going parabolic like this, and that there is going to be some kind of hard reset at some point, is the people that are lending. So if you look at who the lenders are going to be, it's going to be accredited investors, under these certain statutes. Well, accredited investors have $1 million worth of assets besides their primary residence. So I'm in the millennial generation, and not a lot of millennials are going to have that level of assets that they would qualify to be an accredited investor. So then let's say it's going to be older, more established people. Well, is SALT going to have a hard time finding people to lend, to be lenders? Because let's just face it, if a lot of you have tried to explain Bitcoin to your parents, they just kind of, a lot of times, they see the volatility, or it doesn't seem real, like that this money would be digital. They're more into maybe bullion gold, or maybe they kind of understand stocks. But then Bitcoin, I know I've seen a lot of parents, and they'll just shake their head and they'll be like, they'll think it's a company, or who's it owned by. They think it's like it's owned by a company or something. And it's just perplexing to them. So I think that Salt's going to have a hard time finding lenders because of that. They don't understand it, the people who are accredited investors. Now, maybe I'm wrong with that. Maybe venture capital firms come in and they're supplying most of the lending, and then it's a done deal. You know, they've got $300 million or they got $1 billion or whatever, and then it doesn't matter. But I'm under the impression that Salt is trying to facilitate this transaction between individuals, and that they're not looking maybe, I mean, again, I don't know. It could be venture capital money that could be mainly the lenders, or it could be personal, you know, individuals. But I'm under the impression that when the loan gets transacted, that the money goes from the lender's bank straight to the individual's bank via ACH transfer, from what I've read. And that Salt is never going to handle the money. They're just facilitating the transaction and creating maybe an escrow service that's going to hold the Bitcoin as collateral. That's my understanding of it. So I'm thinking it's going to could potentially be hard to find lenders, but that they're maybe going to only accept 20% loan to value ratio just because of the volatility. But I don't know that. And I don't know who's taking on the risk. I don't know if their lender is going to be taking on 100% of the risk, or if Salt is actually mitigating that risk in some way, shape, or form, or that there's going to be some sort of insurance against any kind of losses. Because if this, like, let's just pretend, I'm just saying hypothetically, this bubble burst and then let's say Bitcoin went down to 1,000 real quick, and then you had even a bunch of these people that maybe borrowed $5,000 on a Bitcoin, and then it was like they're all upside down. Because, I mean, we see people, there was a point where, you know, 30% of the people that had houses in Arizona were underwater. They're upside down. People get upside down on cars all the time. So I don't know. That's a big worry of mine. And the platform right now doesn't exist either. So that's the main reasons that I'm not, it's just too speculative to me. And I think that if you're thinking about investing in it, take it as a speculative, you're almost betting on the team. You're betting on the team that they're going to be able to execute, and they're going to get through the compliance issues and the legal issues. And maybe they're able to stair step. Maybe they tackle the easier states. If you think about how Coinbase scaled with GDAX, so GDAX, since it was, you know, a true exchange with a buy and sell order book, they had to basically get money transmitter licenses for every single state, and that took time. So they, you know, every state wasn't opened up. It took a while to hear back from that. And Salt might do that too. There might be like half the states that are going to be like blocked out, and slowly they'll keep chipping away, and then keep scaling it. But that's the main thing. It's gonna be a speculative investment. You're gonna bet on the team. And personally, right now, it's just, for me, I'm not gonna invest in it. I'm gonna wait until the platform comes out and people are saying good things about it, and then I'll look to maybe take a position in it. That's just my thinking. What do you guys think? Are you guys gonna invest in Sol, or maybe use it as a kind of a long shot speculative investment? Or do you guys personally know anybody in the team, or know any other projects that they've worked on that you guys have been impressed with? Leave the comments below. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the weekend, so that would really help me out. Like the video if you liked it, and follow me on all social media at Brian Phobos on Steemit, Instagram, Twitter, all that. You guys have a great night. See ya.